The storm drove her to my door, and seeing a human left her frozen. Lightning split the sky in brilliant, jagged arcs, illuminating the storm's fury. In the center of it all, a solitary human outpost stood stubbornly against the elements, its walls battered but unbroken, a small island of warmth and light in a world gone mad. Inside, Marcus adjusted the controls of a rudimentary weather monitor. The instruments blinked red in warning. The storm was unlike any the sensors had recorded in decades. It had appeared suddenly, building faster than anyone could have predicted. Outside, the wind whipped violently, rattling the walls and tossing debris across the rocky terrain. Marcus had been through storms before, but this one felt different. It carried an energy that seemed alive, almost sentient, and it was moving faster than expected. He tightened his jacket and checked the outpost's perimeter. Everything appeared intact, though a few panels had come loose. He made a mental note to repair them once the storm calmed. That's when he saw it, a figure struggling against the wind, barely visible through the sheets of rain. At first, he thought his eyes were deceiving him. The storm could play tricks, make shadows twist into shapes. But no, there it was, a single being staggering toward the outpost, thrown against the wind like a leaf in a hurricane. Marcus opened the reinforced door and shouted over the roar of the storm. "Hey, hold on, come here." The figure hesitated, a moment frozen against the tempest. Then, as if sensing safety, it lunged forward, collapsing onto the threshold. Marcus caught her before she fell inside entirely, pulling the shivering form into the warmth of the outpost. The human outpost smelled of metal, oil, and heated machinery. Marcus laid her gently on the floor near a heating panel and knelt beside her. She was unlike any being he had ever seen. Her skin shimmered faintly under the flickering light, almost like the surface of a pearl, and her eyes, large, luminous, and impossibly blue, widened as she stared at him. She froze completely, as if seeing him had shocked her into stillness. Marcus noted her posture, rigid and tense. This was no ordinary reaction to surprise. She was calculating, observing, and perhaps trying to make sense of him. He offered a hand, gentle but firm. "My name's Marcus. You're safe now," he said. His voice was calm, though his heart raced with curiosity. "Can you move? Are you hurt?" She didn't speak at first. Then a low, melodious hum escaped her throat, a sound that was almost language, almost song. Marcus tilted his head, recognizing it as a form of communication, though he couldn't understand it. "All right, we'll figure it out," he murmured. He grabbed a towel, dampened from his own efforts, and carefully draped it over her shoulders. She flinched at the contact but didn't pull away. Her eyes continued to study him, wide and unblinking, as if trying to memorize every detail. He looked her over quickly. No obvious wounds, though she was soaked through and shivering violently. Her movements were graceful, almost fluid but tightly controlled, like a predator hiding its weakness. Marcus realized this was no ordinary visitor. She was strong, trained, and possibly dangerous, but not in the way he had imagined. There was no malice in her eyes, only caution and astonishment. Marcus moved to the small medbay, fetching blankets and some basic medical supplies. "You're going to be warm soon," he said. "I'll check you over." The alien, he realized she was alien even without knowing her species, allowed him to examine her. Her body was compact and muscular, perfectly adapted for movement, and yet delicate in ways he didn't fully understand. She flinched slightly when he adjusted her arm, but her eyes never left his. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly. "Just let me help." Slowly, hesitantly, she nodded. It was barely perceptible, but it was enough. Marcus wrapped her in blankets and started the small heating unit nearby. Warmth seeped through her body, and the tension in her muscles eased slightly. As the storm raged outside, Marcus tried to communicate. He pointed to a water container, then mimed drinking. She mirrored him, bringing her own hands to her lips. Relief passed over him. A start. Communication could happen even if it was slow. "Where are you from?" he asked, though he knew he would not understand her language. She didn't respond with words, only a hum that shifted in tone. Marcus listened carefully, catching a pattern, a rhythm, perhaps a name, perhaps a place. "All right," he said. "We'll work it out together." The alien shifted slightly, her eyes scanning the room. She paused at the viewports, watching the storm with an intensity that was almost fearful, yet fascinated. Marcus realized that she had never seen weather like this. Storms on her planet might be controlled or weaker, or perhaps non-existent entirely. This wasn't just survival for her, it was amazement and terror rolled into one. Hours passed and the storm didn't relent. Marcus offered her food, synthesized protein bars and clean water. She accepted, her fingers brushing his as she took them. He noticed the careful, deliberate way she handled each item. Nothing was wasted, nothing ignored. Even in her weakened state, she was precise and attentive. "I've never seen anyone like you," Marcus said aloud, mostly to himself. His words startled her slightly. She looked at him, and for the first time there was a flicker of recognition, curiosity, perhaps even admiration. Night fell, and the storm continued its relentless assault. The alien had grown quieter, observing Marcus as he worked at his instruments, repairing minor damage and adjusting the outpost systems to withstand the increasing wind and lightning strikes. He didn't know if she understood what he was doing, but she watched every movement, her gaze sharp and intelligent. Finally, a moment of stillness. Marcus sat back, exhausted, letting the heat of the panel warm his face. He glanced at her. She had settled on a mat near the wall, her eyes closed, but the tension in her posture remained. Even resting, she was alert, ready for anything. "You're stronger than you look," he said quietly, and for a moment he thought he saw a flicker of emotion, something like acknowledgement, pass across her features. The storm outside began to die down slightly, but the world was still dangerous, chaotic. Marcus knew this was only the beginning. Whoever she was, whatever her mission, it had brought her to him. And somehow, he had the feeling that meeting a human would change her forever, just as meeting her had already changed him. He didn't know her name, her planet, or her purpose. But one thing was certain. She had arrived at the perfect moment, and she was seeing humanity in a way few others ever did. The storm might have driven her to his door, but Marcus felt that their meeting was not mere chance. In the quiet aftermath, with the wind still howling outside and the rain splattering against the walls, a connection had formed, tentative, fragile, but undeniably real. The night stretched on, long and silent except for the storm's dying whispers. Marcus checked his instruments again, then looked at the alien woman. Her eyes were closed, but he could sense her mind was racing, processing everything she had seen, everything she had felt. And he, too, was thinking, imagining what this strange encounter might mean for both of them, and perhaps for the worlds beyond this storm-lashed planet. Somewhere in the distance, a low rumble of thunder rolled across the plains. But inside the small outpost, two beings so different, yet so similar in spirit, had found a fragile safety, a shared space in a hostile universe. And for Marcus, that was enough. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, a story had begun. Morning came slowly, filtered through the thick storm clouds still hanging over Zoria Prime. The wind had lessened, though the rain continued in steady sheets, tapping against the outpost windows with a persistent rhythm. Marcus had been awake for hours, repairing minor damages to the outpost and checking sensors that had gone offline during the night. He worked quietly, aware of the alien woman still resting near the heated mat. She stirred as the warmth reached her, lifting her head slowly. Her eyes, large and luminous, scanned the room and finally rested on him. Marcus gave a small nod, a greeting, and she responded with a soft hum, her voice musical, melodic, but still indecipherable. She seemed more alert than before, her tension easing just slightly. "You're awake," Marcus said, crouching near her. "Good. We need to get you something more substantial to eat and figure out where you're from." The alien woman tilted her head, watching him, but did not move immediately. Marcus noticed how carefully she observed his every action. She didn't rush, didn't speak, and yet her eyes missed nothing. He realized she was studying him as much as he was studying her. "I think you've never seen someone like me before," he said gently. "Humans aren't common where you're from, right?" She made a low hum, different from the previous one, as if acknowledging his words. Marcus took it as a yes. "All right," he said, standing and gesturing toward the small kitchen area. "Food first, then we figure out the rest." He prepared a simple meal, rehydrated protein packs, water, and some fruit substitutes. He placed it on a small tray and held it out to her. She hesitated, then took it carefully. The way she handled it was precise, almost ritualistic. Marcus smiled. She was clearly intelligent, disciplined, and cautious, qualities that made humans seem predictable to others, but in her eyes, humans must have been mysteries. "You're careful," he remarked. "I like that. It means you survive." She made another hum, tilting her head slightly. Marcus interpreted it as agreement. He ate his own meal quietly, letting her have her space, watching as she slowly consumed the food. After eating, Marcus cleared some work tables to make a small space for her to stretch. "You must be tired," he said. "But we need to understand where you're from and why you were caught in that storm. Can you stand?" The alien hesitated, then rose to her feet. Marcus helped steady her, noticing the strength in her legs, the grace in her movements. Unlike humans who were built for endurance in numbers, she was compact, efficient, built for agility and speed. Yet despite her strength, the storm had humbled her, something humans could relate to all too well. "Good," Marcus said. "Now, walk with me." He led her to a device on the table, a simple translator prototype he had been working on. Its main function was to pick up frequencies and translate patterns into understandable language. Marcus activated it, hoping it could help bridge the gap. The device emitted a soft hum and began recording her vocalizations. She made several sounds and the machine worked to detect patterns. Marcus watched as it began producing a rough translation. "Storm, danger, shelter, gratitude," Marcus smiled. "Okay, we're making progress." He pointed to himself. "Human, my name Marcus." Then he pointed to her. "You," she studied him, her large eyes reflecting both confusion and curiosity. Then she made a sound, slower, deliberate. "Elthara." Marcus repeated it aloud, careful to match the tone. She tilted her head slightly as if judging his attempt. Then almost imperceptibly she relaxed. "Elthara," he said again. "Good, nice to meet you, Elthara." She hummed softly, a sound Marcus took as approval. The storm outside was beginning to ease, but the damage it had caused would take days to repair. Marcus led Elthara to the main workroom, showing her the various systems he managed: power grids, communication arrays, environmental controls. She watched carefully, tilting her head, her eyes scanning every panel. "You understand machines quickly," Marcus said. "Most people would take weeks to learn all this. You notice everything at once." She hummed, acknowledging the compliment, and then reached out to touch one of the panels. Marcus held his breath, expecting her to break something. Instead, her fingers traced the circuits with precision, as if she were reading their function through touch alone. "Impressive," he said. "I've never seen anyone do that." She glanced at him, eyes wide. Marcus realized that in her culture, humans must be considered fragile or weak, incapable of handling complex machinery. Yet here she was, judging him, observing his work, and slowly understanding the systems. It was clear she had underestimated humanity before this encounter, and now that perception was changing. Hours passed and they worked together. Marcus showed her basic repairs: how to reroute power, recalibrate sensors, and repair damaged panels. Elthara watched, learned quickly, and occasionally corrected him, pointing out faster or safer methods. Marcus laughed aloud at one point. "You're going to make a terrible boss if you're too good at this," he joked. She tilted her head, considering, then hummed softly. Marcus interpreted it as amusement. They had begun a kind of dialogue, silent, yet rich in understanding. As evening approached, Marcus noticed a small blinking light on one of the external sensors. He went to check it and realized that the storm's residual effects had disturbed a nearby ridge. Rocks and debris were shifting, threatening to block the access path to the outpost. "This could be a problem," Marcus said aloud. Elthara stepped closer, observing. "Come with me," he said. Together, they donned protective gear and stepped outside. The wind was calmer now, but the ground was slick and dangerous. Elthara moved with incredible balance and agility, almost as if she was reading the terrain intuitively. Marcus was impressed. Humans could adapt, but she moved like she had trained for conditions far worse. They reached the ridge. A few rocks had shifted dangerously close to falling onto the outpost's entrance. Marcus looked at Elthara. "Think you can help me move these?" She nodded and, without hesitation, began assessing the weight and placement of each rock. Marcus noticed the care and efficiency of her movements, the way she used leverage rather than brute force. Slowly, carefully, they cleared a safe path. Marcus stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. "You make this look easy," he said. "I've moved rocks before, but you see the problem differently." She glanced at him, eyes still wide but calm. For the first time, Marcus thought he saw a trace of respect. Night fell fully, and the stars began to emerge through the storm's remnants. Marcus and Elthara returned inside, cold and muddy but satisfied. She stood by the viewport, watching the alien night sky with a mix of curiosity and wonder. "You've seen storms like this before?" Marcus asked. She shook her head slowly. Another hum escaped her, more complex this time, a sound that seemed almost like a wordless sentence. Marcus interpreted it as meaning no. She had never seen anything like this before, and yet she had survived it and learned from it. Marcus realized something then. Humans were capable of things that her civilization rarely considered: ingenuity, resourcefulness, calm under pressure. Elthara had been struck by the storm, forced into a place she did not expect, and yet she had learned from a human, something that would alter her perception forever. They shared a simple meal inside, heated over a small stove. Conversation was minimal, mostly gestures, hums, and occasional repeated words, but there was understanding. Marcus showed her how he grew basic supplies, recycled water, and managed the limited resources of the outpost. Elthara watched closely, her mind absorbing every detail. "Most people wouldn't survive a week out here alone," Marcus said. "I've adapted over years, learned tricks, ways to stretch resources, ways to keep the systems running. You notice all this almost instantly." She tilted her head, studying him. Marcus saw a flicker of something new in her eyes, admiration and perhaps a trace of wonder. Humans were small, fragile, and often underestimated. Yet in moments of crisis, they could adapt, survive, and even teach. As sleep approached, Marcus prepared a small sleeping area for her near the heating panel. She curled up, not entirely relaxed, but at least safe. Marcus watched her for a moment, thinking about the improbable circumstances that had brought her here. A storm, a chance encounter, a human outpost. And in all of it, humanity had proven its worth, its ingenuity, its resilience, its capacity to earn respect even from the most alien of eyes. Before he lay down, Marcus made one final observation. "You've learned a lot today," he said softly. "And I've learned something too. Sometimes being human isn't just about strength or numbers. It's about thinking, adapting, and never giving up. You've seen that now." Elthara hummed softly in response, a sound that seemed almost like agreement. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving a quiet world, wet and glistening under the faint light of distant moons. Inside, two very different beings shared warmth, safety, and the beginnings of trust. For Marcus, it was another day of survival, but now it carried something more, a connection, fragile yet real, and the knowledge that humans were not just another species in the universe. They were exceptional in ways others rarely understood. For Elthara, it was a revelation. A storm had driven her to a human's door, and seeing a human, really seeing one, had left her frozen at first, astonished, and now, slowly, curious and inspired. The night stretched on, quiet except for the soft hum of machines and the distant whispers of a world recovering from a storm. And somewhere deep inside both of them, a seed had been planted: respect, understanding, and perhaps the start of something far greater than either could yet imagine. The quiet after the storm did not last long. Marcus noticed it first through the instruments. A soft warning tone echoed through the outpost, low and steady. He looked up from the power console, frowning. The storm had passed, but something else was moving through the atmosphere. The sensors showed strange pressure changes, slow but growing, like the planet itself was shifting after being struck too hard. Elthara noticed his expression change. She stepped closer, her eyes fixed on the screen. Marcus pointed at the readings, then at the ground beneath their feet. "The storm shook more than just the air," he said. "The ground is unstable. If this keeps building, parts of the plane could collapse." She made a sharp, questioning hum and pointed toward the ridge they had cleared the day before. Marcus nodded. "Exactly. If that ridge slides, it won't just block the entrance. It could bury the outpost." Elthara's posture changed immediately. Her relaxed curiosity vanished, replaced by sharp focus. This was familiar territory for her: danger, decision, action. Marcus grabbed his jacket and motioned for her to follow. "We don't have much time." Outside, the world looked calmer, but the ground felt wrong beneath their boots. Small tremors ran through the soil, barely noticeable but constant. Loose stones rolled down distant slopes. Elthara crouched, placing her hand against the ground, her head tilted as if listening. She looked up at Marcus and made a slow, serious hum. "You feel it too," Marcus said. "Good. That means I'm not imagining things." They moved quickly toward the ridge. Marcus carried tools and sensor stakes while Elthara moved ahead, scanning the terrain. She chose paths Marcus would never have considered, stepping lightly, avoiding stress points in the ground. More than once, Marcus followed her just in time to avoid a collapse under his own weight. "You see the planet like it's alive," he said breathlessly. She glanced back at him, then touched her chest and the ground in front of her, making a soft sound. Marcus understood enough to nod. "You were trained for this." At the ridge, the damage was worse than before. Cracks had spread like veins through the stone. A deep fracture ran straight toward the outpost's direction. Marcus swallowed. If that split widened, the entire slope would come down. "We can't stop it," Marcus said quietly, "but we might be able to slow it. Buy time." Elthara looked at the tools, then at the ridge, then at Marcus. She made a series of short, sharp sounds, then pointed at several spots along the crack. Her meaning was clear: reinforce, redirect, reduce pressure. Marcus's eyes lit up. "You're right. If we anchor the stress points and drain the pressure outward, it might hold." They worked together without speaking. Marcus drilled deep anchors into the rock, placing stabilizers that redirected stress into the surrounding ground. Elthara adjusted placements, corrected angles, and added her own devices from her gear. Small, compact tools far more advanced than Marcus's but limited in number. Time blurred. Sweat soaked Marcus's clothes. His hands ached. More than once the ground shifted violently, forcing them to brace themselves against the rock. At one point, a sudden tremor knocked Marcus off balance. He slipped, sliding toward the fracture. Elthara reacted instantly, lunging forward and grabbing his arm. Her grip was iron-strong, pulling him back just as a section of rock collapsed into the crack below. They froze, breathing hard. Marcus looked at her hand, still gripping his arm. "You just saved my life." She stared at him for a long moment, then slowly released him. Her eyes lingered on his face, searching. Something changed there. Humans were not supposed to survive places like this. Yet here he was, standing beside her, adapting, refusing to give up. They finished the final anchor just as another tremor passed through the ground. This time the ridge held. Stones shifted, dust rose, but the crack stopped spreading. Marcus let out a long breath. That's all we can do. They hurried back to the outpost. As soon as they were inside, Marcus sealed the door and ran to the monitors. The readings stabilized slowly. The danger had not passed completely, but it had been pushed back. Elthara leaned against the wall, clearly exhausted. Marcus handed her water. She accepted it without hesitation, drinking deeply. Trust came easier now. "You handled that better than most trained engineers I know," Marcus said. "You saw the problem faster than the machines did." She hummed softly, then pointed to him, then to the tools, then to the ridge. Her sound changed tone, deeper, more thoughtful. Marcus smiled. "Yeah. I guess humans don't wait for perfect tools. We work with what we have." Elthara studied him in silence. In her mind, something important was breaking apart. Humans were supposed to be physically weak, overly emotional, dependent on technology and numbers. Yet this human lived alone on a hostile world, survived a planetary storm, and faced geological collapse with calm focus and stubborn creativity. That belief did not survive today. The rest of the day was spent reinforcing the outpost. Marcus showed her how humans layered solutions, backup systems for backup systems, mechanical locks paired with manual ones, power reroutes designed to fail safely instead of perfectly. "Humans expect things to go wrong," Marcus explained. "So we plan for failure, not success." Elthara repeated the phrase slowly through the translator. Failure, not success. The idea fascinated her. As night fell, the planet grew quiet again. No wind, no thunder, just distant animal calls and the soft hum of the outpost. Marcus prepared a meal while Elthara watched. This time she helped without being asked. She adjusted heat levels, conserved power, and reused materials Marcus would have discarded. Their movements began to match, smooth and coordinated. "You'd fit right in with human crews," Marcus said. "You adapt fast." She paused, then looked directly at him. She spoke more clearly now, the translator struggling but managing. "Human, not weak." Marcus blinked, surprised. Then he smiled. "No, we're not." She added another word carefully. "Human, dangerous." Marcus laughed softly. "Only when we have to be." Later, they sat near the viewport watching the stars. Elthara traced a pattern in the air, pointing to a distant cluster. Her voice hummed softly as the translator worked. "My people watch humans from far." Marcus turned toward her slowly. "You knew about us," she nodded. "Stories, old records, say humans burn bright, then burn out." Marcus considered that. "We do burn bright, but we don't burn out easily." She looked at him again, truly looking now. The human scars, his tired eyes, his calm presence. He was not a warrior by her people's standards, not a ruler, not enhanced or augmented, and yet he stood against storms, ground, and fear itself. That scared her more than any weapon. As they prepared to rest, the long-range scanner beeped. Marcus stiffened. That signal wasn't here before. He adjusted the screen. A ship's signature appeared at the edge of the system. Alien, advanced, scanning cautiously. Elthara froze. Marcus looked at her. "Is that your people?" She nodded slowly. "What happens now?" he asked. Her answer came after a long pause. "They will see human." Marcus leaned back, thoughtful. "Then they're about to learn something new." Outside, far above the planet, the alien ship adjusted its course. Its sensors locked onto the small human outpost, alone, unshielded, insignificant by galactic standards. Inside, Marcus stood calmly beside Elthara, human tools at the ready, mind already planning. The storm had tested survival. The ground had tested cooperation. What came next would test belief. And humanity was about to be judged, not by strength alone, but by resilience, courage, and the quiet refusal to break. The first rays of sunlight cut through the remnants of storm clouds, painting the jagged landscape of Zoria Prime in soft hues of gold and gray. The world outside the outpost was slick with rain and littered with debris, but the day was calm for the first time in over 24 hours. Marcus moved carefully among the scattered tools and equipment, surveying the outpost. The previous night had tested the building's endurance and his own abilities, but everything had held. Elthara watched him from the doorway, her luminous eyes following every motion. She had slept longer than usual, exhausted from the storm and the activities of the previous day. Yet her posture was alert, her every movement precise and deliberate. Marcus realized that though she rested, she never truly relaxed. Her instincts were tuned for survival. It was a trait humans shared, and one that had, over centuries, allowed their species to endure in environments far harsher than this alien world. "Good morning," Marcus said, his voice calm and steady. "Did you sleep well?" She gave a soft hum, tilting her head slightly in response. Marcus interpreted it as yes. "All right," he said. "We have work to do. The storm has left the terrain unstable. We need to make sure the outpost is fully secure before more supplies arrive or before anyone else notices the damage." Elthara nodded. She stepped forward, moving with confidence now, no longer hesitant or frozen. Marcus couldn't help but notice how her trust in him had grown since her arrival. The alien who had arrived at his door, frozen in astonishment at the sight of a human, now moved with purpose beside him, observing, learning, and even anticipating the next steps. They began with the external barriers. Rocks had shifted during the storm, threatening to block pathways and destabilize the outpost's foundation. Marcus and Elthara worked together, lifting and shifting rocks with careful leverage. Marcus explained his methods as he worked, how to use simple machines, pulleys, and counterweights to move heavy objects with minimal effort. Elthara absorbed every instruction, adapting quickly and even suggesting slight improvements. "You're very quick to understand," Marcus remarked as they repositioned a particularly large boulder. "Most would take hours to figure this out, but you," he paused, considering his words, "you see solutions others miss." She hummed, a sound that seemed almost like laughter or approval. Marcus smiled. Her mind was sharp, but more than that, she was unafraid to adapt, to experiment, to trust instincts. It reminded him of the human explorers who had crossed deserts, oceans, and frozen wastelands, unafraid to confront the unknown. Once the external barriers were secure, they moved inside. Marcus examined the power grid, which had suffered minor surges during the storm. Elthara watched carefully, her eyes tracking every wire, every spark. She reached out and touched a panel. Marcus held his breath, expecting a reactive response, but instead she adjusted a switch, stabilizing the flow of energy. "You're very good at this," he said. "Even I would have taken longer to fix it. You understand machines in a different way. You see patterns I sometimes miss." Her response was a gentle hum, as if acknowledging the compliment. Marcus realized again that the alien perception of humans as fragile and weak could not survive here. They were small in size, yes, but their ability to think, to adapt, and to solve problems under pressure was remarkable, even to one of the most disciplined scouts of her species. As they worked, Marcus began explaining more about the outpost systems: water filtration, temperature regulation, communications. Elthara followed each explanation, then demonstrated her own understanding by correcting minor inefficiencies and proposing alternate configurations. Marcus laughed aloud at one point. "You know," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead, "you're going to make me look bad in front of my own people. Or worse, you're going to teach them things they didn't think humans could do." She tilted her head, a faint glow in her eyes suggesting amusement. Marcus smiled. He could not fully understand her culture, but he sensed admiration in her demeanor, a recognition that humans were more than myths or stories of weakness. They were resilient, adaptable, and unexpectedly formidable in their own way. The morning passed into afternoon, and they paused to eat a simple meal of rehydrated protein and water. As they ate, Marcus gestured toward the horizon, where the storm had flattened patches of terrain and uprooted alien flora. "You see that?" he asked. "All of this was changed by the storm. Nature doesn't wait for us to be ready. It keeps moving, keeps testing us. That's how humans survive. We adapt, we improvise, we don't give up." Elthara watched silently, then made a hum of acknowledgement. Marcus realized she was not only listening but reflecting, absorbing not just words but ideas about resilience, ingenuity, and endurance. They spent the next several hours repairing and strengthening the outpost. Marcus explained techniques for reinforcing walls and ceilings, and Elthara assisted, sometimes outperforming him with her agility and precision. By evening, the outpost was in better condition than before the storm, a testament to human persistence and cleverness. Marcus leaned back against a wall, breathing heavily. "You've seen a lot today," he said. "Not just a human surviving a storm, but how we think, how we adapt. Do you understand?" Elthara stepped closer and touched a panel, adjusting it with a subtle movement. Then she turned to him, her eyes reflecting something new: respect, understanding, and perhaps even wonder. "You're capable," she said finally, her voice translated through the device they had been using. Marcus smiled. "Yes," he said simply, "we are. But not always in ways that others expect. Humans survive by thinking, by noticing what others ignore, by never giving up. That's how I got here, that's how you got here, and that's how we handle storms like this." The alien woman nodded slowly. "I underestimated humans," she admitted. "I thought fragile, weak, but strong, clever, resourceful." Marcus chuckled softly. "Glad I could change your mind, but strength comes in many forms. Some you can see, some you can't. Humans have both, that's why we survive." Night fell once more, and the sky cleared, revealing stars that glimmered against the black canvas of space. Marcus and Elthara stood near the viewport, silent for a long moment, taking in the alien landscape. The storm had left scars, but it had also revealed something deeper: humanity itself. "You have taught me," Elthara said after a pause. "Not with words, but with action, with your mind, your hands, your courage." Marcus nodded. "And you've taught me too," he replied. "That even in the most alien of visitors you can find respect, curiosity, and the ability to learn. You're stronger than you think. We both are." The quiet stretched, peaceful now, a contrast to the chaos of the storm. Marcus looked at her and realized that their meeting had changed them both. The alien who had arrived frozen with astonishment now stood confident, aware, and open to understanding humans as more than just fragile creatures. And he, a human accustomed to survival in isolation, had discovered a kindred spirit who recognized ingenuity, resilience, and courage as universal qualities. Before turning in for the night, Marcus prepared a small sleeping area for Elthara near the heating panel, just as he had the night before. She curled up, not completely relaxed but safe, her eyes reflecting the faint glow of the instruments around the room. Marcus sat nearby, listening to the quiet hum of the outpost. He thought of the storm, of the dangers they had faced, and of the lessons learned. Human ingenuity, he realized, was more than tools and machines. It was observation, adaptation, and the refusal to yield to circumstances. Elthara had seen that firsthand, and he knew that she would carry this understanding back to her people, perhaps changing the way humans were viewed across the galaxy. Outside, Zoria Prime rested under a calm sky. The storm had passed, leaving the world altered but intact. Inside the outpost, two very different beings shared warmth, safety, and a bond born of challenge and understanding. Marcus looked at Elthara once more. "Tomorrow we continue repairs," he said softly, "and maybe we can learn even more from each other." She hummed, her eyes closing in quiet acknowledgement. Marcus smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment and wonder. The storm had driven her to his door, but what had started as chance had become something profound. A shared experience, a mutual respect, and the beginning of a connection that might one day shape more than just their small corner of the galaxy. He leaned back, letting the soft hum of the machines lull him toward sleep. The storm was gone, but its lessons remained. Humans survived because they adapted, learned, and persevered. And now, even an alien scout had learned that humans were not to be underestimated. In the quiet, under the soft glow of instruments and distant stars, Marcus realized that the universe was larger than any storm, and yet in its vastness, moments of understanding and respect, like this one, could make all the difference. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more repairs, and more discoveries. But for now, the outpost was safe, the alien was alive, and humanity had proven its worth once again. Outside, Zoria Prime waited silently, but inside, a human and an alien had found common ground, resilience, ingenuity, and respect. And for Marcus, that was the true triumph of the storm. The storm drove her to my door, and seeing a human left her frozen.